Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive in again? Today we're tackling the Christmas story, but hold on to your Santa hats because we're going full-on Gospel of Luke, chapters 1 through 3, the whole shebang.
We're talking swaddling cloths and censuses.
You think you know this story, right? But trust me, Luke's version, packed with details about Jesus' birth and childhood, that'll make you see the whole thing in a whole new light.
Luke has this way of weaving in these details, these historical tidbits, that really add layers of meaning that you might not catch on the first read-through.
Exactly. So forget the carols for a second. Let's unpack this thing. Now, we all know the usual suspects, right? Mary, Joseph, that whole manger situation. But Luke doesn't even start there. He kicks things off with a different birth announcement.
Oh, you mean John the Baptist?
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah, Luke starts with Zechariah, John's father. You've got this elderly priest told by an angel that his wife, Elizabeth, who's also up there in years, is going to have a son.
Talk about a plot twist.
Right. But here's the thing, Zechariah, he doubts. Big mistake when you're dealing with an angel, let me tell you.
And boom, he's speechless. No more talking until baby John arrives.
You gotta love it. It's like, didn't believe me. Okay, try explaining this one without words.
Seriously. But what's fascinating to me is how this whole thing with Zechariah, it's not just some random miracle story. It sets the stage for everything that's about to go down.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, John's birth, it's not just about John. It's about getting the world ready for, the main event.
The Messiah.
Exactly. His very existence creates this sense of anticipation, like a drum roll before the big reveal. Something huge is about to happen.
Speaking of huge, cue the angel Gabriel with some life-changing news for Mary.
This young woman from Nazareth, betrothed to Joseph, is told by the angel Gabriel that she's going to have a son. And not just any son, mind you, the Son of God.
Whoa. Talk about pressure.
Right. Imagine the weight of that announcement, especially back then. Considering her age and social standing, it's mind-blowing.
Betrothed, not even married yet. And suddenly she's carrying the Son of God. That's like off the charts, huge.
Yeah.
And yet Mary's response, I am the Lord's servant, she says. May your word to me be fulfilled.
Talk about faith. She's all in, accepting God's plan, even though it's going to turn her world upside down.
That's some serious trust right there. It really makes you think, How often do we let fear or worry about what other people will think keep us from saying yes to what we feel called to do?
It's a powerful message for us today. Maybe we don't get visits from angels, but we all have those moments where we have to choose faith over fear.
No doubt. But hold on a sec. How does this all lead to Bethlehem? That's not exactly a hop, skip, and a jump from Nazareth.
That's where Lick Genius for historical detail comes in. He mentions a census ordered by Caesar Augustus, the big cheese himself, the Roman emperor at the time.
Ah, so no treasure or anything.
Right. And this little detail, it's not just random, it's crucial.
It's like Luke is saying, hey, pay attention. This isn't some fairy tale. This happened in history.
Exactly. So because of this census, Joseph, being a descendant of King David, has to go back to Bethlehem, David's city. And of course, Mary, who's getting ready to pop, has to go with him.
Talk about a road trip.
Right. And, Luke could have just said they went to Bethlehem, but he doesn't. He actually emphasizes Mary's experience, her perspective, highlighting that long, difficult journey while she's heavily pregnant.
It's like he wants us to really picture it, to understand what she went through.
Exactly. It just adds another layer of meaning to the whole Christmas story. The sacrifices that were made, even before Jesus was born.
I never thought about it like that. It's like those little details, they make the story real, So they get to Bethlehem, exhausted from the trip, and what happens?
No room at the inn, can you imagine? Not even a cot in the corner. They end up in a stable with a manger as the best option for a crib. We all know the image, but it's striking, isn't it?
Like, this is how the King of Kings enters the world. Humble beginnings, to say the least.
Exactly. And this right here, it speaks to something Luke emphasizes throughout his gospel. Jesus' identification with the poor, the marginalized, the forgotten.
He's not born in a palace, that's for sure.
No palace. And it's a theme we'll see again and again. God's love, salvation. It's not reserved for the privileged few. It's for everyone. Okay, so no room at the inn, manger it is. And then who shows up?
Don't tell me, let me guess. The wise men? With their gold and frankincense?
Nope, not quite. Luke says the first visitors were shepherds.
Shepherds. Like sheep shepherds.
The real deal, watching their flocks at night.
You wouldn't think of them as a VIP guest for something like this.
And that's exactly the point. It's Luke saying, this good news, this message of hope, it's not just for the religious elite. It's for everyone, even the rough around the edges shepherds. And what does the angel tell them? good news of great joy for all the people. This isn't some exclusive club, it's universal.
Talk about a message that resonates.
Yeah.
And it's not just one angel whispering this, right?
No, no, we're talking a full-on heavenly host here. Luke describes a multitude of angels praising God, singing, "Glory to God in the highest heaven, and on earth peace to those on whom his favor rests."
It's one thing to read those words, but to picture those shepherds out in the middle of the night, suddenly surrounded by this heavenly choir.
Mm.
Wow. But it doesn't end there, does it? The angel gives them some pretty specific directions to find the baby.
Right. And it's in those details that Luke really shines. He doesn't just say the baby was wrapped in cloths. He uses a very specific word, swaddling cloths.
Okay, so what's the big deal with swaddling cloths?
Well, there are these strips of fabric specifically used to wrap newborns. It's like a sign, you see.
So the angel's giving the shepherds a way to identify the Messiah, like a secret code. Swaddling
That's
cloths, check. It's in those seemingly small details that Luke conveys so much meaning. It's brilliant. But okay, the shepherds visit, they find the baby Jesus. What happens next?
Well, following Jewish custom, about a week later, Mary and Joseph take Jesus to the temple in Jerusalem. Circumcision, the whole deal. And here we meet two fascinating figures, Simeon and Anna.
Let's hear about these two. Who are they?
So, Simeon, he's this righteous and devout man. And get this, he'd been promised by the Holy Spirit that he wouldn't die before seeing the Messiah. Talk about a long wait.
Can you imagine waiting your whole life for that one moment? So what happens when Simeon finally sees Jesus?
The Spirit leads him straight to Mary and Joseph. He takes baby Jesus in his arms and utters this incredibly powerful prayer. Blessing, prophecy, the works. He calls Jesus a light for revelation to the Gentiles and for glory to your people Israel.
Okay, light, revelation, glory, those are some loaded words. This is not just your average baby blessing.
Not at all. And this is where the historical and theological context is so important. Back then, the Jewish people were expecting a Messiah who would, restore Israel to its former glory. The Messiah was for them, for Israel.
Their own personal superhero, so to speak.
Oh. Right. But Simeon's prophecy, it blows that expectation wide open. He's saying Jesus is a light not just for Israel, but for all nations, for the Gentiles.
Oh, they're a game changer.
It's radical. He's proclaiming the universal significance of Jesus' birth.
Okay, so Simeon just dropped some serious truth bombs in the temple. What about Anna? Where does she fit in?
Anna, she's described as a prophet, a widow who's dedicated her entire life to worship in the temple. We're talking constant prayer, fasting, seeking God. Now, that's dedication.
Talk about commitment.
Right. So when she sees Jesus, she immediately bursts into praise, thanking God and proclaiming Jesus' true identity to everyone there, everyone who's been longing for the redemption of Jerusalem.
But I always wondered about that phrase, the redemption of Jerusalem. What does it actually mean?
It's huge, especially in the context of Jewish hope at the time. They had endured centuries of oppression, exile, always clinging to the promise of a Messiah who would rescue them, restore their nation to greatness.
So it's more than just about a physical city.
Exactly. When Anna speaks of the redemption of Jerusalem, she's talking about spiritual liberation, the restoration of God's people, the fulfillment of his promises.
So it's like Simeon and Anna are on the same page here. They both recognize Jesus as the promised Redeemer, and they're shouting it from the rooftops. It's like Luke is using these encounters to create this incredible sense of anticipation and affirmation.
He's a masterful storyteller. He doesn't just tell us, he shows us, drawing us right into the mystery of it all. But after all the excitement, the angelic choirs, the prophecies in the temple, what happens to Jesus?
Yeah, where did the story go from here?
Well, things settle down quite a bit. The family returns home to Nazareth, where Jesus lives, for the most part, a normal life. Luke tells us he grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man.
So after all that, just a normal childhood.
As normal as it gets for the Son of God, I suppose. But even within this seemingly ordinary life, Luke includes a story, an episode that gives us a glimpse into Jesus' developing awareness of who he is and what he's meant to do.
Okay, now that's a story I gotta hear. What happens?
So picture this. Jesus is 12 years old. The family's making their annual trip to Jerusalem for Passover, like they always do. Big celebration, lots of people.
Right, the pilgrimage to the temple.
Exactly. So on their way home, Mary and Joseph, they realize something's wrong, like really wrong.
Uh-oh.
Jesus, yeah, he's not with them.
Oh, man, talk about a parent's worst nightmare. Losing a child in a crowd, I can't even imagine the panic.
They search everywhere. For 3 days, they're frantically looking for him, and finally, they find him.
Okay, where was he? Hiding in the marketplace.
Nope, try the temple.
The temple.
Yeah, but he's not playing hide and seek. Luke describes him sitting among the teachers, listening, asking questions, even debating points of theology with them.
Hold on. A 12-year-old going toe-to-toe with these religious scholars. That's some next-level stuff right there.
Right. It's another example of Luke showing us just how extraordinary Jesus is, even as a young boy. This isn't just a kid showing off. There's a depth of understanding there that's amazing. And when Mary finally finds him, she's like, "What were you thinking?" And Jesus, his response is just, wow. He says, "Why were you searching for me? Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?"
My Father's house. Not just the temple, but my Father's house. Even at 12, he knows who he is, why he's here. It's powerful.
It's a huge statement about his relationship with God, his sense of purpose. But you know what gets me? Mary's reaction. Luke says she treasured up all these things in her heart.
I mean, what mother wouldn't? But it feels like more than just a mother holding on to memories.
Right. It's like she's constantly reflecting, pondering, trying to grasp the mystery of who Jesus really is. Even those closest to him, they were on a journey of faith too.
It's something we can all relate to, right? Trying to understand those moments in our lives that challenge us, that leave us with more questions than answers. Maybe, like Mary, we're supposed to treasure those moments, even the confusing ones, and let them shape us.
Beautiful. And, before we get to Jesus's public ministry, which we'll save for another deep dive, Luke, he does something really interesting. He circles back to John the Baptist.
Wait, back to John. But we haven't heard about him since, what, the beginning of our deep dive?
It's intentional, though. Luke, he's reminding us of John's importance in preparing the way for Jesus. Remember, John's birth, it was surrounded by the miraculous, the angelic pronouncement.
Right. The angel, the prophecy, Zechariah losing his voice, the whole 9 yards. Yeah.
Exactly. Luke's showing us this isn't just a random collection of stories. It's all connected. It's all part of God's plan. And John's ministry, it's like the bridge. It connects the extraordinary events of Jesus' birth to the start of his public ministry. It's all part of this bigger story that's unfolding.
Wow, that's a great point. I never really thought about it like that, but it makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So we've gone from Zechariah and Elizabeth waiting and wondering, to the shepherds and their angelic encounter, to Simeon and Anna's pronouncements in the temple, and finally, to Jesus' own understanding of who he is and what he's meant to do. That was quite a journey through just the first few chapters of Luke. What are some of the key things that stand out to you that we can all take away from this deep dive into Jesus' birth and childhood?
What really struck me is how Luke manages to show us Jesus's humanity in the middle of all these incredible, miraculous events. We see him as a baby, a child, a young man, growing and learning like any human. It makes the Christmas story feel so much more real, so much more relatable, don't you think?
Totally. And the way Luke uses those little details, like you were saying earlier, the swaddling cloths, Mary pondering everything in her heart, Jesus growing in wisdom. It's like he's saying, look, God is in the details, not just the big flashy moments, but the everyday stuff too.
Exactly. It's a good reminder for all of us to pay attention to those small moments, to look for how God is working in and through our lives, even when it seems, well, ordinary.
That's a great takeaway. It's been amazing, eye-opening even, to really dig into these familiar stories and unearth so much depth and meaning.
It really is just the beginning. There's so much more to explore in Luke's gospel as we follow Jesus into his ministry, his teachings, his death and resurrection. But these early stories, they lay the foundation. They help us understand who Jesus is and what his coming means for the world.
It makes you realize how much more there is to uncover in these texts, no matter how many times you've read them before.
That's the beauty of it, right? It's a lifelong journey of discovery. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I'll leave you with this. How does Luke's portrayal of Jesus' early life, his humanity, shape how you see his ministry and message? How does it challenge you? Until next time, keep diving deeper.